just meditating this morning as I went for my walk, and something started developing inside of me. Just a thought that I saw as a seed. I love the fact that we have this freedom to explore the seeds together. That unsurety as to whether to press record is almost like planting the seed when you press record.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know what's going to come out, but as we start talking, it becomes clear, and things that we weren't thinking of start coming to mind, and connections start happening. This is the profound reality of studying scriptures in this way, I suppose.
Yeah, in the way of seeing the hyperlinks in the text. When you explore those in study, is that leaves the ghost of a map, in a way, in your brain. And when you map one thought, it will light up other thoughts that are connected. And it's quite incredible to see it like that, because there are hidden treasures deep within this way of thinking. And the more that you explore the scriptures holistic, connectedly, the more this map or this mechanism is going to be strengthened in your brain.
There's probably science to this, but we're not about science today, are we? I don't know. We might be a little bit, but do you want to start with your seed thought?
Yeah, I was reading Ezekiel 36 and considering what we were talking about with, I think we were doing Leviticus, the Hatat offering, the sin offering. This is what we were seeing anyway, the sprinkling of the blood in different places in the tabernacle was affecting a kind of release of the static for the sins of the nation. And when we say sins, we always have to remind anyone who's listening that is merely a deviation from God's will and purpose and design, to be honest. That's in the idea of Tov and Ra, Tov being good, Ra being deviation from good, which does look like things that we can, in our English sense, label as evil. That's the extreme end of it.
It's a manifestation of it, isn't it?
It's the manifestation, ultimately, of things that are not aligned with God. And I think I need to start here by saying that, well, we had a little discussion about God. What does that mean? And what does God's reputation mean? And really, God, when we say God, when we think about God, it's strip it away from all its bearded man in the sky religious interpretations. It's life. God is life. God is life that wants to happen. God is the potential for life to happen. And the real problem with God's reputation, as we'll see in this text in Ezekiel, God's reputation having a blight on it, it means that it restricts humanity's access to potential life, like actual life, really, the way that our current paradigm cannot perceive as being life. It's so much more than this, that song, there must be more than this. There really is always more than this, because the nature of God's life is from, as we talked about before, from an endless, that's the picture, isn't it? The river that flows from the throne of God. That's the picture of perpetuality of life from an endless source. A river is something that is perceived as an endless source. It's something that you have scriptures about. You build your cisterns and you've left the source of living water. Living water is not an accident. That this movement of water is representing something that seemingly does not have an end to it. And that's the picture of life. That's the picture of God. So within all that, yeah, I don't know why I went off on that, but you said something.
Yeah, I think we're just, I don't know, I'm just loving listening to you. Yeah, so let's have a look at Ezekiel 36, yeah? That's where you were. What were your thoughts there?
Well, I was just reading Ezekiel 36 verses, say, 22. is maybe the first where we really want to jump into. And actually, we're going to see that there's a chiasm here. So just fast forwarding to where we're going, maybe, that 36 verse 22 and 36 verse 33 are bookends. Or maybe 32, sorry. And they both say, I am not doing this for your sake. I'm doing this because, let's take the sentiment of verse 22 of chapter 36, that it says, my holy name which you have profaned among the nations, I do it for that sake, not for your sake, O house of Israel. And this is like a thought that maybe that's actually really lines up with what I was saying about God being life and access to life being restricted when God's name is profaned. That's kind of that. But in the middle, I will sprinkle clean water on you. I will. There are I wills in here.
Yeah, we saw those I wills and we tracked them alongside Exodus 6. There are I wills then. In Exodus 6, it's the formula for liberation. That's God's kind of blueprint or plan. The I wills form a sort of milestone map of the liberation from Egypt. And here in Ezekiel...
Yeah, we were calling this the formula of recreation, and it's a return. You know, the key middle part of our conversation actually was talking about return, the Hebrew word shuv. And literally this is the picture of when Israel are turning or returning from the nations after exile. It seems like a bigger exile. It seems like, I don't know what the background is, we could look into it, but that's not our intent today. But I'm sure the context of this is, oh, you got something.
Yeah, he was speaking to the exiles of Babylon, and actually he is speaking of a return from Babylon, but the language, especially in verse 24, I think. Yeah, 24. Do you want to read it?
Yeah, okay. For I will take you from the nations, gather you out of all the countries, and bring you back to your own land.
If this was just about the return from Babylon, the terms there would be singular, but it's plural. Nations and all the countries. So there's something going on here that's bigger than it is maybe seeing in pattern, in fractal, in something bigger than this return, even though this return is a big one from Babylon. But there's something bigger he's speaking into here. So that's kind of the backdrop, all that I can say at the moment.
And I think this also speaks into the return within us. I think this also speaks of a mechanism, as we were saying. What was the term?
Oh yeah, Exodus 6 compared with Ezekiel 36, the formula of liberation and the formula of recreation, or return, I suppose, recreation through return.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's it. So I was just thinking, so these are my seed thoughts. I don't know how to put it into words.
Give it the best shot.
It's so difficult to put some of these concepts into words because, number one, they're going to sound very coined. Do you know what I mean? They're already going to sound like things we think we know. And I'm going to just start with one thing and just see what happens in your brain when I say this, that it's God that does it. It's not anything to do with our action. And I was just thinking in terms of the sprinkling, I was kind of stuck on Ezekiel 36, verse 25 for a little bit. Then I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be cleaned from all your uncleanness and from all your idols. It's different being sprinkled clean to actually not living that. The sprinkling isn't effectuating. Oh, is that the right word? Effectuating ritual, like the ashes of the red heifer, cleansed people from something on somewhere, somehow, to do with death, and how that blocks the way to approaching God and with what I was saying before, experiencing life. So in the same way that God's name is profaned in the nations, is blocking humanity from accessing God, accessing life force. So the purification is something that unlocks the way back, unlocks the possibility. It's an affect, an unlocks door, as it were. And then you have to come back. The idea of Shuv I was thinking in terms of Phinehas. This is part of our conversation, isn't it? That, in a way, turn is, it's complicated. It's not complicated. It's just complicated to try and get it into words. Help me out.
We were talking about Phinehas, and let's just say it as it is, and see where it goes. That Moses was commanded to take all the ringleaders, or the leaders that had sinned at the incident at Baal Peor, when the Midianite women came down and tempted Israel into following the gods of the Midianites, which was a battle plan that kind of worked. We were saying that Balaam before was summoned by Balak to come and curse Israel, because Balak was very, very scared of this force that had wiped out the bodies of the place at that time. Old King of Bashan, who was a 12-foot giant, was wiped out. It's like, what's going on here? Who are these people? So he had no chance militarily, but he tried to employ the spiritual, the cursing mechanism of a sorcerer. And Balaam wasn't a sorcerer. He was a diviner. He heard God's words, but wasn't in the practice of changing God's mind or but he tried. He gave it a go, and it failed. And God victoriously spoke blessing through him. Anyway, after that incident, we see, actually in the Torah portion we're following now, that God speaks to Moses and says, you need to go and take vengeance on the Midianites for what they did to you here. So they did, and they killed a lot of people. And among them were, yes, the father of the woman, Cosby, who is the one who Phinehas speared. He was amongst the leaders that were killed in this battle, but also Balaam, the one who was employed to curse Israel. So there's a conjecture that he continued to try and help Balak, and he employed God's own wrath. He weaponized God against Israel. He said, well, we can't do anything externally, but we can come in and we can internally turn their hearts towards the other gods, and that will invoke the nuclear fallout, because God amongst them, it's a very powerful force, but it comes with a big responsibility, and you need a hazmat suit, all that stuff. We're talking about that. The comparison in Leviticus with that idea. It's a force of, not a force of nature, a force of God moving forward that is going to get these people into the land. But it comes with its dangers, and Balaam, in his twisted wisdom, and this is the crazy bit really, it goes into the New Testament talking about Balaam, that once you know the mechanism, he heard God's voice, he almost kind of knew God in a way. He could, if you divine from God, you get a sense of, in a way, his mechanism, who he is, how he works. And he knew that he could turn God against his people if he could get them to do something. And yeah, God does. The plague comes. And it's such a big event. It really is it's successful in a campaign. And then God commands Moses to hang the leaders. And I hope I'm...
No, this is good. Keep going.
Okay, so God asked Moses to hang the leaders, and that's not enough. It seemingly, in the text, we see that the plague stops when Phinehas comes and drives a spear through two people who've come into the camp. Just don't seem to be aware of the gravity of this situation. They're just lost in it. And I wonder whether there was something to do with drugs in there, that's completely losing your heads. That was maybe the ways of the nations, and there was just no reality check. Their brains are checked out on intoxication. That's my conjecture anyway. So the spear went through these two, and the plague stopped. It wasn't the hanging of the leaders. It wasn't this mourning that was going on at the entrance to the tent of meeting. It's apparently the plague was still going. It wasn't enough. What God even commanded wasn't enough to stop the plague. it needed someone that had the zeal of God to match that zeal down below in actually doing something. And we were talking about that being Shuv, turn. That is the action of Shuv, of turning, that actually stopped the plague. It doesn't matter what God said before, well, maybe it does, but it was that action that was the power, that was the... And we were saying something about the heart of man.
Yeah, I don't actually know what I asked you to say that for, but I love it. We just carry on.
Yeah, my memory's gone as well. I just got off on. Sorry about that.
No, this is... I'll get back, and I'm sure we'll get back to it. For now, I've forgotten what I was going to say.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, the idea of return. So why What did I ask you to say all this?
I don't know, you were about to say something. I wanted to hear it.
Completely got. I'm sorry.
Dear, oh dear. Oh well, it'll come back if it needs to, and this we don't need to worry, we're just having a conversation. Yeah, the whole spear incident was the thing that stopped it. And it's like, yeah, there's a mirror in the zeal that Phinehas had, that matched something that God had. And I think maybe that's the whole thing about God sees the heart. And, you know, within...
Oh, yes. Sorry, yes, that's what I was going to say. Exactly, God sees the heart. And he's the only one who can truly judge what's going on in the action of return. He knows whether it's lip service. He knows what's going on. And it's... Yeah, okay, so this kind of leads... Thank you, sorry. You finished?
Yeah, I mean, I was finished ages ago. Yeah, the heart, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so... And this is interesting because the middle of the chiasm is the heart, the change of heart. And we were saying, well, we were talking about the idea that Shuv, repentance, it's a bit of a complicated web of a picture, but for simplicity, I'm just going to speak out my seed thoughts here, that really it's a dance between God's affectuation and our actualizism. Trying to match the words there. Anyway.
Carry on.
So, I don't know, God, there's so much in my head. How am I going to direct this flow of thoughts into words? Putting it simply, this is from literally my thoughts, and I thought there was something going on here. That God is the one who affects and creates the environment, and we are the ones who live it out and actualize it. The door is unlocked. The way is prepared for that to actualize the way that God has purified for. So above is a realm that we don't experience and can't really understand, the paradigm of above. But the purification is almost like a deposit, you know, with the ashes of the red heifer, the sprinkling of the water, is like a deposit of the above state that has been affected by God's will. And just like, I suppose, the return to Babylon, from Babylon to Israel, God opens the door and people walk back there. That's level one of a return, the physical return, like you actually get your feet back into the land, you know, and walk it and build a house there, you know, it's plant something there. That's the most basic form of return. But then it's return to him. And when we say return to God, return to him, return to life, return to the life that God wants you to live there, that is really guided by the word of the covenant, the words of the covenant, and the life of the covenant lived out in the below paradigm. And that is what brings the reality of what started with an affectuation of sprinkling, of a condition unlocked in the above, and brings, it's our walk, it's our continual returning, not just physically, but then in our hearts to God, to life, the flow of life, that actualizes that potential in physicality. And this is why I think the middle of the chiasm here is that God himself replaces the heart of stone with a heart of flesh. God is the one who, because that's the middle of the chiasm, that's actually what's going on, returns a heart to you.
Reminds me of the Psalm, actually. Psalm, I think it's 23. Returns your whole self to you. He returns your nephesh to you. Is part of that psalm. And I don't want to go there now, but that's one of the ideas in Psalm 23 that we did when we followed through with our friends in Israel. Yeah, he returns your whole self to you, and your whole self is, your heart. And that's, once you start walking and earning and doing, just taking that imagery of Phinehas, when you display on earth the level to which the higher reality, the higher paradigm, the above paradigm is actually coming from, then his kingdom come, his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It lands. It's, if talking about when we looked at the Kabbalistic tree of life, apologies, but it makes total sense to go there now. Ein Sof lands in Malchut, and Malchut is the intent of God for creation is, I think, I'm not sure which talk it was, which conversation, but anyway, we were saying that, God is not interested in being endlessly out there. He wants to land. He wants to become real life. He wants to be demystified. He wants to look like a healthy community. He wants to look like a healthy environment, healthy world, the way he designed it to be. He wants it to be delight. And that, the Hebrew word for Eden, that's how you can literally translate Eden. So so the heart.
Yeah, the heart of the matter is the change of heart. The heart of the matter is the heart. And that's the middle of the chiasm here. So let me just go through, maybe. Actually, I'm going to start with the I wills, because it's very useful to see a formula. And you can understand, you can map that onto what you experience in life. I will take you from among the nations. I will gather you out of their countries. I will sprinkle clean water on you. I will give you a new heart. I will put my spirit within you. And remember, spirit is just literally the breath of life. It's the movement which is fundamental to life. And we're talking about his spirit, so his life, breathing in and out of us. And I will cause you to walk in my statue. I will cause you. It's God doing it at the end of the day. That was that was the massive thing, as I said. It's like God actually does it all. That's mind blowing the more you think about it.
Yeah, and wow. But we could get, but I'm saying well, and I'm carrying on with well, I'm adding, but we can get hoodwinked by that idea. In a way, we can misinterpret that and say, well, we don't need to do it at all. But if we want to land that stuff, we take the flow of the I wills, for instance, and we're going to look into the chiasm. You need to do something. You need to do the Shuv. You need to do the return, as we said. You need to actually make this reality concrete and real. This is the paradox, is that the above is more real than below, but actually, as Devorah points out, our friend in Israel, it's all real. The above and below are real, and God's intent is to merge the two, marry up the two, join the two. You'd say rejoin the two, and that's the idea of repent, the idea of turning. So do you want to carry on?
Yeah, okay, so we haven't got long, actually, unfortunately. That's just the way it is. The chiasm. So the outer, I'll just finish with this, and then we might go into this again a bit later with a longer conversation, a bit more structured. The outer edges, the motivation. So, not going to give the chapter numbers, I'll just give the theme. It's the verse 22, it's the outer edges, verse 22 and verse of this chiasm. So when we align the parallel ideas working from the outside edges towards there's the centre here, going inwards, the architecture of this passage in a chiastic uncovering looks like this. And we're going to do it in a pathway rather than stating the outer edges and looking at the centre. You can do that, but I think it's really revealing to see the pathway here. So, first of all, the motivation. It's not for your own sake. It's for my holy name. We start at that. And weird things on that. That's a bit egotistical of you, God. Well, I suppose he's the only one who it's safe to... I'd love to have God's ego. I'd love to have God's perfect self-identity that manifests. That's what we're talking about. He manifests himself. He wants to manifest his ego. And as it were, she's talking in those terms. So, but no, we get to point B, verse 23. I might as well say the verses. The vindication of the nature of his name. The vindication of his name. The nations will know I am holy, it says there. And we're saying that's now the reason why he's doing it is for the vindication of his name. But the real reason is because the nations will then be able, humanity will then be able to not be put off by what they see this God manifesting as. It's really misaligned when they look at how the land is destroyed, Israel is in exile, they've had a terrible time of it, and then, if you look in the history books of how they've operated, it's been worse than all the other nations in terms of, how this has worked out for them. It's not making God look, it's not real, as it were. And then we get the land. I will gather you and bring you into your own land. So there we have the return being affected. The first affect happening. He will physically pick them up, turn them around and enable them to come back to the land. And again, within that, you have to do the walking. You have to affect that physical return. You have to actually walk back, or on your donkey, whatever. And that's verse 24. Then I will sprinkle clean water and cleanse your filth, your idols. There's a lot of history there that has a lot of static that needs clearing. There may be guilt, there may be habitual stuff, there may, sometimes we just need to know that there's a line being drawn, and that in itself is an empowerment to walk in it. And I think that's the magic. That's the magic of the affect, the affecting that God does when it's the sprinkling happens. It's something that really doesn't make sense. It's got a metaphor to it, sprinkling with water, but really it doesn't do anything. It's just representing a reality, and that's the beginning point. And I think this between D within this chiasm in the centre, we've gone A, B, C, D. The motivation, not for your sake, but for mine. B is the vindication of the name for the nation's sake. C is actually returning you to the land. And D is the cleansing. Is this now, he's returning them to their heart. He's beginning that door, that open door, so that, let's draw a line. Everything that's gone before. Cleansing you from your filth, cleansing you from your idolatry. You've had Babylon, you've had a time to think. And as we know in Deuteronomy, it says that the exile is where the circumcision of the heart happens. In a way, it's the unlocking of the heart, the beginning of the Shuv, of the return of the heart in the circumcision of that, the uncovering of that which is blocking the way for the heart to emerge in fruitfulness. And that's what circumcision imagery looks like there. Then you come to the middle, the centre, the new heart and flesh. And yes, God does that. Yes, God gives that. But that is following the cleansing process that we see in the D part of this chiasm. It's the sprinkling, the be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's a new heart and flesh is directly because actually your mind has started to think within the reality that the cleansing, that the rituals, that what God has said about you has manifest itself. We're talking about grasshopper self-seeing when it comes to the spies in the land in Numbers, wherever that was, 13, I think it is. And they could not enter the promised land because they saw themselves as grasshoppers. And if you see yourself as a grasshopper, you'll act like it in the world, like a lens that you put in to your self-seeing mechanism. Life will happen to you through the lens of a grasshopper. And People will respond to you like a grasshopper as you also act as a grasshopper. So it's about transforming, renewing your mind like a metamorphosis to realize that you are not like a butterfly. You are not a caterpillar anymore. That is a creature that is fundamentally died. There are cells that are programmed to die in the pupa stage, and there are imaginal cells that rise up out of the stew. It's incredible, the process of metamorphosis, and that's the Greek word behind be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's so the new heart and flesh then starts happening within you. And then the Spirit, I will put my Spirit in you to cause obedience. That's verse 27. I will put my Spirit in you. That's the life of God, actually God living within you. Remember, we're demystifying God. He is life as it is designed to be. Breathing within you. That starts happening because the actualization of what has happened in the above is starting to beat within you. It starts with a heartbeat, but the heart needs oxygen. The heart is just merely the pump that pumps the blood. The blood has the potential to pump oxygen, but you need to breathe in order to give oxygen to that blood. So now we have the breath. We got the pump, we got the blood, and the mechanism for delivering life around the body. Now we have the Spirit, the breathing in of the oxygen of the life of God that is going to empower that body. And then we come back out of the chiasm, we dive back out, point C mirrored here. The land, again, just as point C before was the coming back to the land from Babylon. Now, the land, you are living in it. And the blessing of God is happening in that land as you are living covenantally from a changed heart, from a life that is breathing and supplying the new changed body with the air, the breath of God, the breath of life. So you are going to start living a life within the land that is then going to breathe life into that land. It's going to start to represent delight, Eden, a community that actually works according to the design that God has laid out for us to live by communally. But not just that, with the land. We're talking about we forget about the land.
Yeah, we often forget about the land, don't we? That it's just earth and we plant stuff. But it responds, it's living as well. And I think on Saturday I was talking to some people in our community who were hugging a tree, and they actually interacted with that tree and heard the tree that was groaning for the revelations of the sons of men. Like it says in Romans, it's like it's longing, creation is longing for us to wake up to the original design that God has intended for us. A profound moment from this person. I mean, it's a bit weird because this person is slightly weird, but never known her to be that weird. Anyway, but it's true. It's like I've had it before. I've hugged a tree at the back of my garden and I felt a deep sadness, and it's like, what is going on here? And then, lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, it was chopped down, and I didn't know at that time that was a possibility. And anyway, there we go. That's another story. I don't want to take you off.
No, thankfully I've got the map of the chiasm here, so I'm not going to go off too far because I've got it in front of me. So yeah, the land, brilliant. I love that. Yeah, the land is very important. That's almost like the landing. That's almost like, we were talking about Ein Sof de Malchut. That's kingdom is Malchut in English. The landing of God on earth. And really, we do mean earth. They're very earthy. He wants to become earthy. He wants to become, Adamah, that comes from the word for soil, Adam, from which Adam was brought from. Like, he wants to bring earth to life. And we are the ones who administer over the earth, but the earth is conscious. The plants are conscious. The ecosystem is conscious. And the more you enter into this kind of mystical stuff, the more you realize that's the fundamental reality that God is seeing everything from and wants us to see like it. Very interesting. But yeah, the land is starting to live. There's life in that land. There's abundance. There's prosperity. It's probably starting to make the nations look and say, hang on a minute, let's reconsider who this God was. We want this life. And yeah, that's the purpose of Israel, to be a light to the nations. And then we get to be a response to the name. You will remember your evil ways and loathe them. And that's in mirror image to the vindication of the name. And it's like something happens within you when you really start embodying the name of God. There's a lot in that, in what does it mean? What does a name mean? But you're embodying that name. You know, when I say, I don't know, Queen Elizabeth II, what comes up in your head? That name, that kind of, that personage. So, yeah, and that response from within you is coming from a name that is being lived within you. It's like, how on earth did I think I could do that and be that? I actually loathe this stuff. Rather than God giving you a reality that may not be your reality at the moment, you know, like addictions and stuff. Well, you know that you're free, but there's relapse, you know. Or the reality is you're loved, but you need to become lovable. But this is a further down the line stage where you've actually embodied that, and you look back and you look at what you used to be, and you don't even want to do it anymore. Something has changed so fundamentally within you that you literally are a different person. That a butterfly looks back at his caterpillar stage and says, what? I can't believe that's what I used to be. I can't even try to be that anymore. I've got wings. Those cells have died. New ones have been brought to life from within me, and I'm a different creature.
Wow, I love the way you're doing this. The parallels here, really making this powerful.
Yeah, I mean, this is coming from what I was seeing, at how maybe the essence of what I was seeing. And it's not complicated. We always say that it should be brought down to the simple level. All this stuff, this spiritual stuff. God wants to live through us, by us. And then the last thing, we get to the mirror of the motivation. It's not for your sake, but let it be known. And it's almost like, I don't know, for me that is like a mirror of, you know why. It's not for you, your sake. Because you've become, in a way, altruistic, like God is. And the altruism that God has for humanity starts at the beginning. The first opening verse of 22 looks a bit egotistical. But when you get to 33, 32 even, the motivation, you realise that it's not about you. And you realise that you, being in covenant with God and it not going very well, and God is your father, etc., that dynamic, it's great that he does stuff through us. He does love us like a father, but it's not ultimately for you. It's for humanity, because we are all one, ultimately. And that's why we come back to the motivation from the butterfly consciousness. And you realise that if you don't keep covenant, humanity stays in prison. You know, if you don't shine, the world can't experience what you're experiencing. You know, the Garden of Eden, the Garden of Delight, is the word garden in Hebrew is literally an apportioned area. It's got a fence around it almost. It's just a test plot, as I've heard in the past, of an experiment that God wants to go viral. God wants this thing to grow and to fill the whole earth and fill the whole experience of all humanity. But as we've looked into the dynamics, haven't we, that can't happen the way that we want it to happen.
Yeah, the way that the whole of humanity just getting it. No, it needs a spearhead, doesn't it?
Yeah, it needs the front end. It needs a pioneering nation, a pioneering people living in covenant with God to start that, to grow the seed that then can be planted and multiply the Tov of God, the purposes of God, the landing of God amongst maybe even the nations. But it's got to be aware that this is the process by which the light is lit, is that you become a new creation. And of course, now we're talking, I think we need to finish. We really need to finish. Someone's at my house, actually. The process here is essential to being the light. It needs to happen to you first, just like it needed to happen to Moses first, to be redeemed and to bring them to the mountain. You know, we didn't go into the I wills of Exodus 6, but you can see a similar pattern. Moses needs to do it first. You need people who are Hebrews, the ones who cross over. That's what that word means. And we see in the scripture many times that idea, the idea of Hebrew, crossing over from one place to another, being a pattern, a motif all over the place. And we need to be Hebrews first before humanity can become a Hebrew and cross over from wherever they find themselves living to the higher paradigm of life that God has actually opened the door for, bringing it into the messianic interpretation with Yeshua, which means that's God's salvation. God has done it again. He's done it again. He's affected it. He's affected it in the upper realms, in the mirror image above. And this is why it doesn't really matter what Yeshua, the man, has done, what the manifestation of salvation of God has done. For you open the door. You have to walk through that door. You have to become that, and that's the whole crux of the gospel. I say crux in a pun, tongue-in-cheek way.
The crux, comes from the root that we get cross from.
Take up your cross, follow me, means become it. There's no use it being up there with all its potential. Tap into it, become it, and it's ultimately looks like death. That's what the cross is. It's like the cells within the butterfly, within the caterpillar that needs to die, that are programmed to die. Let that programming run out, and let those imaginal cells that are going to become a butterfly have a new flesh, be enriched from a heart that is beating, blood that is breathing the air of God's life, the Spirit, His Spirit. Yeah, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, dear, very good. Really, really, I'm glad we pressed record this morning. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've just really enjoyed listening to this. We talked about so much more, but hey, we need to stop. There's always more, isn't there?
Let the conversation continue.